hails all the way currently from Florida, but had been living in Cleveland, Ohio. Jeff's background is a lawyer, working in a corporate law firm, then setting up his own business in 1996 and leaving that in 2001 to create his own business, and a complete change in the whole kind of coaching, leadership, and also keynote speaker and author. And he is the author of a number of books. But I think this podcast is really, really important because, the title that we've given it is Leading the Shift. And when we talk about that, it's very intentional because, the shift is about some change, and we all need to embrace change, even if we all say we welcome change, but the truth is somewhat different. But for anybody who is going through significant change, and let's face it, we all face change on a continuous basis, is to understand how we can embrace it, how we go about it, how we can push ourselves through it, and how we really can manage ourselves through that process of change. I think what you get from this is some of the tools that Jeff has used in his own life and also with clients, and really getting that mindset in the right way, and to understand the choices and the impact that the choices make, but also our freedom to choose how we respond in different situations. So really think this is hugely beneficial to anybody who is at any stage of their life, but also recognizing that this is now a time of specific change that they need to embrace and undertake. I would suggest also to all of you to go to my website where you can download my short book, which can be consumed over lunchtime. I was intentionally written that way, The 10 Key Traits of Top Business Leaders, which really does help you and is written to kind of help you to become the leader that you are capable of. But there's also loads of goodies there, podcasts, blogs, videos, etc., that really will help you on your journey to being a leader of your own life, but also being a leader of your team and the people around you. But in the meantime, sit back and enjoy the wisdom of Jeff Nischwitz, who really is quite an inspirational speaker. Jeff, it's great to have you here. I'm really delighted. I know that you're currently in Cleveland, a place you know well, having spent many years there, but you've made your home in Florida. So you must be experiencing the extremes of heat and cold in the last few days, but you're very welcome.
Yeah, it's I never really loved the cold, John, and being in Florida now and coming back periodically makes it more challenging. I was quite cold here yesterday.
I can well imagine that we're talking about it. Just a bit of background, to kind of where you got to. You started your career as a lawyer. You were in a kind of a major corporate firm, and then you left that in 1994, and you set up your own law firm, which you continued on until 2001. And I'm interested that obviously you kind of you went into the corporate world. You then thought that going out and setting up your own one was kind of the route to go. But after 7 years, you discovered, well, maybe not. I'm just curious about that journey and transition from one to the other.
Well, it's funny. You asked. Everybody always wants to know about it, and for me, it didn't seem like a big deal, but I was the one in it. And I think it's like a lot of things. I went on this path that I selected when I was young and achieved my goal, and then I said, now what? And I had a desire to create something, so I started the firm. And what happened was I spent the first 5 years plus, getting it right. We ran the business very differently than most law firms. We ran it like a business. I had a vision that said we're going to be a law firm, but we're going to be a business, and we're really going to serve our clients well. We built a great team, and after about 5 years, I was running the firm, being one of the top producers in terms of new clients and revenue, and I was building the team. I was doing a lot of things, but the cool part was I had a life. I actually figured out how to practice law and have a life. I had a great life, but what happened was when I sort of figured out the business of law is when I finally took a look and realized I didn't actually like practicing law. What I loved was the business side, and I practiced for 17 years, and I was quite good at it, but the reality was I didn't really like it, and probably, people thought going and starting my own firm was a big leap. The bigger leap was really quitting something that I had committed 17 years in education to go be who I really was. So I think people look at me from the outside and say, how did you do that? How did you have the courage? And I'm not a big fan of courage. I think courage is the label we put on the outcome. For me, it was pretty simple. To me, there was a no-brainer. I can't do something I don't love. So I'm going to leave. And I did.
Yeah, I think it's interesting because to many people when they're in, and I can identify with it, having been in the corporate world, is that, part of you when you're in the corporate world is kind of, well, could I actually create my own business? And there's that little question mark in your own head. And then you go and you create your own business, but doing effectively the same work to discover that actually it wasn't really about, kind of having your own business. It was actually just the frustration of the work that you were doing. And it was the work that wasn't sitting with you. Because I know from my own background of kind of going from being a CEO of a financial services company to doing what I do now, coaching senior executives and teams, that seemed like a huge step. But a bit like you, it was almost like, well, I don't want to stay doing what I'm doing, and and I don't want to, and it's about choices, and I know you're big on choices and decisions we make, and we come on to that a little bit, but it's also about the how you want to spend your life and what you want to spend your life doing, and to an extent I can understand what you say. To the outside world, it seems like a huge step, but when you're in it, it doesn't seem that big, does it?
No, it really doesn't, and that's. I've been speaking a lot recently, and we'll probably talk about it. My new book has a whole chapter about tapping into our why, because once I have a why, the what becomes really easy, and it's the thing I'm compelled to do. And I will tell you this, John, one of the most profound lessons I learned from quitting something that I was in for so long and making that supposed leap was that until the day I decided to leave, till that day, I would have told you, if you said, how happy are you? I would have said, yeah, I'm all right. How are things going? Yeah, I'm all right. It was kind of that okay level. And the day I decided to quit, but I didn't leave immediately. I was not going to leave anyone hanging. It took 6 months. It was a 6-month transition. But the day I decided to leave, I realized that I actually hated it. And what I learned in that is that, and I tell people all the time, if you think that things are okay, they're actually worse. That there's this thing we do to make sure to keep us from changing. And I tell myself, yeah, it's all right. I was miserable. Those last 6 months were the worst 6 months because I realized how much I just disliked what I was doing. But I had told myself, it's okay. So I tell people, if you're okay, you're way past it.
Yeah, because I listened to a clip of one of your talks, and you talk about that, and you're saying that if somebody says, "Oh, well, I'm okay," well, then the bar is terribly low. It's the bar is really not low, and I always think it's also the power of language, isn't it? That when you ask people, and people just kind of respond with the word that comes to mind. Okay is actually pretty bad, isn't it? Because it's not terribly exciting and it's not terribly engaging. It's just about bearable. And I always think okay is just about bearable. But, when you talk about that, how do you then move people that you're working with to kind of come out of okay? Because okay is also kind of comfortable, even if it isn't great, but it's a known territory. How do you get them then to kind of go from, I'm okay, which really means I'm kind of comfortable, to I'm going to be uncomfortable, but I'm going to go for excellence?
Well, you jumped a couple steps there, and that's cool. So I'll go to that question. So what I hear you saying, John, is how do I help people get, first of all, out of comfortable, willing to be uncomfortable? There's two things. Number one is I help them get a vision for what they really want. And that's not, that's actually challenging, because what I found is people don't want to have the vision, because if they have the vision, they know that it's going to be difficult to not pursue it. I really believe that when people say, I don't know what I want to do, I say, yes, you do. You're just afraid to know. And that's the second part. I believe that fear drives most of our lives if we let it. And most of us make up stories that say, I can't do it now because of this. I don't know what I'm going to do. I don't know where I'm headed. But it's really fear. So what I do is I help people find the fear, and then we sort of tear up the fear and help them understand what's really going on. Because if fear is in there, I'm rarely going to take action. But I got to better understand the fear and acknowledge it. So I've even changed the question. I don't even ask myself anymore, am I afraid? Because I realized if I ask myself, my brain's going to say, well, of course not, you're good. So I assume the fear. So if I'm stuck, if I'm not moving as fast as I want, the direction I want, the question I ask myself and my clients is, okay, so what are you afraid of? Let's just go right into it. Because once you see it, it has no more power over you.
Yeah. And one of the things that I find in talking to people and working with people is very often, we talk about, well, I'm afraid because what happens if I fail? But also I think the other part of it is what happens if I succeed?
Isn't that interesting, John? No one ever asked that question. You sit in team meetings and they go, oh my God, what if it doesn't work? And I said, what if it works beyond our wildest imaginations? How would that be? And it's funny, we have been, at least here in the States, I believe we have been sadly culturized. Still not sure if that's a word, by the way, but I wrote it, so it must be now.
It'll do fine.
It sounds good, right?
It sounds really good.
We've been culturized to ask the protective questions. And I'm starting to discover and conclude that what's happened is most of us have had life experiences that caused us to think about protection, and it carries over into our businesses, into our teams. So we focus on questions that are protective. What if it doesn't work? We have to take care of the downside instead of really leaping for the upside.
I think that it's, I come across it more and more, and sometimes it's actually can be with people in the corporate world, because there's this kind of pull between being safe and not doing anything too risky, or sticking your head above the parapet, or being different, and yet it is that differentiation that is actually likely to make you successful, but we fear that very thing that would make us stand out. And I think it is about getting the courage. But you talk a lot in your content about choices and the choices that we make, and that is the choices that determine our success. I'd just like you to elaborate a bit more on that.
Yeah, I'll give you a quick story about how profound that is important to me. A number of years ago, I was having a birthday, and my friends gathered, and I'm known for questions. My friends and my clients know me as I'm really good at questions. So they sat around the table at the bar and said, Jeff, ask us a question you've never asked anyone before. Well, that's no pressure for me. I thought that was fun. So here's the question. I said, we're going to go around the table, and each one of you, I want you to tell me, if you had to get rid of every belief you have, every philosophy, you got to get rid of all of them. You can only keep one, and it can't be a belief in a higher power, because I knew a lot of people would choose that one. Mm-hmm. So I said, but you get one. So we go around the table. I went last, and they said, all right, Jeff, what's yours? I said, that's simple. I always have a choice, because that one, when I really believe that and live that way, I can never be a victim. I can never blame anyone or anything. I take full responsibility for my life and the impact I have in my life and on others. It is the most empowering perspective. that now, I used to, there was a time in my life I always felt like, oh my God, this happened to me, I had bad luck, all those things, why can't I get a break? Well, if I'm a choice guy, it becomes, how do I create my next break? And what am I going to do with what's in front of me? It is, like I said, it's the one I would keep if I had to get rid of all the beliefs and all the ways of thinking and being. It would be that one. I always have a choice.
Yeah. Because I think that, it was just, there was a book I was reading there very recently. I think it's called The Untethered Soul by Michael Singer. And he was talking about,
you went deep, didn't you?
Yeah. Have you read it?
I have.
Yeah, I mean,
that's the book's not skimming the surface.
No. You don't read that just about when you're going to nod off at night. It's not that sort of book, that's for sure. And I read it. I mean, I'm still reading it because I've been reading it for quite some time. Because, as you say, it's not kind of light reading. But he was talking, this, and you will know from the book about kind of who are you. And very often we identify with our feelings, which are a consequence of things that happen to us. And it's the ability to be able to stand back from that and to observe them and not make them your identity. And I just think that was a really powerful message in what he is talking about. And we so much identify with the events that happen to us and that they become who we are, instead of actually just recognizing it's not the event, it's the choice, the point that you're making, it's the choice that I have to respond to it. And the more I can do that.
Well, yeah, and even the choice of words, right? I used to say, hey, I'm really sad. Well, no, I'm not sad, I just feel sad. And I will tell you, I watched a movie recently that was really quite excellent. I think my son gets me because he always recommends unique movies. And the movie was called Peanut Butter Falcon. And it's a story about a young man who has Down syndrome and has a yearning to be more in his life. And he has a dream to be a professional wrestler. But it's this it's a great storytelling. But in this, the man who plays this character has Down syndrome. Right. So this is not someone playing it. And there's a line in the movie where his new friend, who he's on a journey with, says to him, why can't you do that? And he said, I can't because I am Down syndrome. And I heard that made me feel sad. And his friend said, who told you that? And it was all about how he had taken that on, that's who he was. It was not just something that was part of his life experience. Yeah. And he could change it by making different choices and not accepting the label.
I think that the fascinating thing is that if you really get that message clear in your own mind, you can change your state in a heartbeat. Now sustaining it is maybe a different thing, but you can actually change your state in a heartbeat, so that it is about that belief that it's not what happens to you that actually makes you who you are. It's how you respond to that. I'm really interested in because there are two books that you mentioned. One is the one that you got coming out, which obviously I haven't read, but you wrote a book called The Unmask, and you talked about the 5 essentials of a conscious leader, which I really loved. What you were talking about was awake, aware, authentic, accountable, and actionized. Just talk a little bit about that, because I think that a lot of the work that I do is about leadership. It's about leadership of teams, about leadership of people, leadership of yourself. And I just thought that was just a great way of actually putting it. So maybe just talk to that, to elaborate on it.
Yeah, that book, it's interesting. When I was working on another book at the time, and I went to a book writing workshop, and we went through a process that it was sort of like, what's the thing that must come out of your soul kind of question. And what came out was Unmask. All ended up being Unmask. And the other book I just put on hold because it was nice, but it wasn't in here. And it is from a perspective of personal leadership, self-leadership, because my belief is that at the deepest part of everyone, we are all leaders. I firmly believe that leaders are made, not born. because I've never met a 1-year-old that has leadership traits. We acquire them. And I started thinking about this progression. Well, if I want to become a better leader, I'm going to have to change perspectives and thinking. Well, the first thing that has to happen is I have to wake up. So I have to be awake, because that's that moment, but I can go back to sleep. So once I wake up, then I need to stay in that space, which means becoming more and more aware. And then in order to be aware of who I really am, I have to be willing to be vulnerable, which means being authentic. And then I said, so we've got this person brewing as a leader, but we got to have action. Well, but to have action, we got to make some commitments, which means accountability and honoring my commitments, which is a matter of integrity. And then all this great stuff, that's a word I did make up, by the way. I can't believe actionize is not a recognized word. It's like, how could it not be?
Absolutely. You and I will continue to use it, and it'll become an accepted word.
Exactly. So for me, it was this full picture of this the theme is, how do you become a more conscious leader? Because probably next to choices, the power of owning my choices is, I believe that for me and for others, I show up and I have all the impact I can possibly have the more conscious I am. And I minimize my unintended impact, because when I'm conscious and present, I make great choices. The choices I make that don't serve me or the world are the ones I make when I'm unconscious. That's what happens. And I'm not present. I'm in default mode. So that book was really a journey and an invitation and a roadmap to take people to being the most conscious leader they can be.
Yeah.
And therefore have all the impact they want to create and minimize the impact they've been creating in the past.
I mean, I think it's really interesting. I mean, I'm fascinated by the whole subject matter of leadership, because I think that, in the 15 years since I've been running my own business, working with organizations and businesses, one of the things that's particularly in corporates that become more dominant is organizations have moved to much kind of flatter organizations, and there aren't as many layers. And traditionally the view was, well, if I'm a leader if I've got a team of people, but that's where and that's changed significantly. That it doesn't matter whether you've got nobody reporting to you, you're still a leader, and you've got to understand what leadership means and accept the responsibility of leadership. And I think to many that can be a challenge, and I would absolutely agree with you. I don't think leaders are born, because I think leadership comes and the manifestation of leadership comes in all shapes and sizes. But I think that what you put it down to in terms of awakeness, awareness, authenticity, accountability, and actionized, to use your own word, but I think that that's so important to have that. So I think it is important. Can I move on to the book that you're about to publish, because I am interested in that. And I think the background to that was the journey along the Camino. That is not too far away from me here, but that was quite a profound experience for you.
Yeah, I went to, as we were chatting before we got on, I saw a movie called The Way a few years ago. And when I saw the movie, and I won't go to the whole story, you'll have to read it in the book of how that movie showed up in my life. It was talk about synchronicity. And I decided to go and wasn't fully sure why I was going, but knew I had to go. And as my friend Mark LeBlanc, who I'm really blessed, mentored me a bit on it and was my coach for a while and wrote the foreword to the book. And he said, you're going to go because you've been called. And I said, how do you know? And he said, because I can see it in your eyes. And so I went in May of 2017, not knowing how deeply profound it would be. And it was, I think I have this quote at the opening of the book, that I went thinking that the Camino would be a life-changing experience. But what I found it was a life-accessing experience, because it opened up who I was. I saw the world differently. And I journaled along the way, and when I got back, I said, I need to figure out all that I learned and sort of integrate it and share it. So coming in January is this book. The book is called Just One Step, a lot of walking involved. I walked 200 miles on the Camino in 10 days, so 20 miles a day. And the book is called Just One Step, The Journey to Your Unstoppable You. And the premise of the book is that what unstoppable means is that I'm in a place, or anybody's in a place, that they're experiencing this feeling of being unstoppable. And doesn't mean that we're always going to get what we want. But we can go into every situation, every opportunity, every relationship with a deep truth, this inner truth that says, I am unstoppable. And there's a lot of unusual thinking in it. I mean, I will tell you this, John, this book scares me a bit. This book is, there are moments that the voice comes up and says, Jeff, what you're sharing, I call it the secret sauce for living a different life. And there's that voice that says, well, who do you think you are to think you got that? And I've told that voice to just go hang out over there because I'm not listening to you. And there's two, I'll share real quickly. There's, I always look at books this way. If you had to get rid of all the chapters, what's the one you would keep? And then, go that way because how many chapters there are. And the chapter that would have to be there, because it's the essence of the book, is how to live and experience life in the present. And the premise is that when I'm in the present is the moment of unstoppability. Because in the present, there is no fear, no regret, no shame, no fear of the future. All I'm in the moment, and that's unstoppable because there's nothing in my way. The key is to get there and stay there. And then I also wrote a chapter, the second chapter that I'm really excited about is called Walking Backwards. And it's about the fact that on the Camino, I had some very serious feet issues, very painful. And the most painful part was walking downhill. That made it even worse, the pain. And this all happened on the third day. So I walked for 7 days on this, very painful feet. And what I learned was that the best way to go downhill with the least pain was to walk backwards, literally backwards. And so I started walking the Camino hills backwards, downhill, no matter what the terrain. And it's all about how we can do that in our lives. And I'm finding that too often we have these challenges or opportunities, but our solutions are tweaks. Well, let's do it 5% different than we did last year. Like you said, I think before we got on the call, I'm not sure, early on about how people don't want to be different. Well, no, this is about being different. People looked at me like I was crazy on the Camino until they tried it. I watched people try it, and then they kept doing it. They're like, wow, this actually works. Yeah. So I share a lot about what does it mean to walk backwards in your life. So I'm excited, which means I have a lot of joy about the book, and a little bit of fear that says, how's this going to go? But I'm a believer that fear is good as a driver. Yeah. So I'm leaning into the fear.
Yeah, curious in terms of, going on the Camino and your friend saying, I can see it in you that you need to do this. Are you, firstly, why the Camino? And secondly, are you kind of a spiritual man? Was it a kind of a spiritual journey for you?
It was a little bit of everything. What I learned on the Camino, and we chatted before the call, that the Camino became very popular after this movie called The Way. And the traditionalists don't like it. The traditionalists think now too many people are there. I'm thinking, why don't you want people to have this experience? So I saw this movie, The Way, and I literally, I'll tell you briefly, I was in a hotel in Raleigh, North Carolina, where we actually met. Absolutely. And it was a Saturday morning, and I was excited because I could sleep in. I was exhausted, but I woke up at 3 in the morning. And I'm very persistent, and I refused to get up for 3 hours. And I was like, oh my God, it's 3 a.m. But at 6:03, I remember, I looked at the clock, I turned on the TV for the first time, and there was a movie coming on. I didn't know what the name was, and it was The Way. And I watched this movie, and about halfway through it, I realized that I had probably 4 or 5 times just broke down weeping. And not because of anything happening in the movie, I was just overwhelmed with emotion. And about the third time, I said, I have to do this. And so, the people in the community, some people do it for exercise, some people do it to get away. Some people go to find answers. I am a very spiritual person. You know, the Camino is based upon a Christian foundation. It's a lot of things now. I happen to be a Christian, but that wasn't the driver. The driver was something about it was something about solitude and just being alone. I chose to go alone. I occasionally walked with people, but predominantly walked alone. I chose not to take any distractions, no music, no books, no headphones, nothing. It was just be in that space. I call it now the journey of aloneness. I think I made that word up too. Not loneliness, but aloneness. And it was a place to see myself more deeply than I ever have, and get some lessons I couldn't have got elsewhere, to meet some interesting people with cool stories. I do have to tell you real quick, one of my favorite stories of the Camino is I met a woman from Germany, and her profession is she's a clown.
Oh, right.
I've never met a clown that's their profession. So we talked about that a lot. And at one point, I said to her, I said, who's the most you? Who's the most real you? You or the clown? And she immediately said, oh, the clown. The clown is the most me, the truest me. And here's what she said, and you know my book title. She said, and she's talking about herself in decent English. She said, I wear lots of masks. Do you know what I mean? And I started laughing, and she sort of was offended. Said, why are you laughing at me? And I pulled up my phone and I said, I write books. And I showed her a picture of the book I wrote, and she starts laughing. So, of course, I met somebody on the Camino that was telling me about the mask she wears in her life.
Isn't it extraordinary? But I think also that alone, as I remember a number of years ago, I did a trek in the Himalayas to the Everest Base Camp. And I must say that it was one of these things that, that somebody said I really should do, and I made a decision to do it. And then when I was on the plane going out there thinking, what the hell am I doing this for? And why am I going again on my own to do this? But I've always found that the curious thing was that I kept a journal, as you did, and when I look back on the journal, only about a third of the journal was actually about where I was, what I was doing, what I saw, whatever. The other 2/3 was actually just that self-reflection about where you were going with your life. And I think to invest the time to, as you did on the Camino, to kind of really kind of go inside yourself, I think it's a wonderful, wonderful thing for anyone to do, to really, really get inside themselves and to see themselves and not be plugged into everything, as you say, every iPhone, every podcast, whatever it might be, even though here we are in a podcast. But I think it is that need to be on their own. So you've got the book coming out. It's coming out in January 2020, is that correct?
Right, yes.
Okay, so what's next for you, and what's the next phase for you, Jeff, and what you're doing and your mission?
Yeah, thank you for that question. And I appreciate the word mission, because it's quite emotional for me, because I really do feel like it's a mission. And the big pieces are, I want to touch more lives. I want to touch more organizations. I want to touch more teams. I want to touch more individual lives. My want is to show people a different way of living, a different way of leading. I have a fundamental belief that leadership is not about work. It's about life. It's about how am I leading in my work, in my teams, with my relationship, with my family. And I believe that the more that people show up and live and lead differently, it has I really believe in the ripple effect. So what I'm doing with that is the book is part of it. Books can touch more people quickly. But I'm actually, in addition to my current business, which is a lot of speaking and coaching, I'm working on a new business venture that will create a leadership platform that will have the capacity, basically take, the wisdom that I believe I have a business partner in it, his wisdom, and the wisdom of people all over the world, like you included, to say, here's some tools, some different perspectives to help give access to this to more people. Because frankly, I love it when people say, hey, Jeff, come talk to us, come coach us, and they pay me well. but it's a small percentage of people who are prepared to invest in that. I want to create something where more people around the world can get access to these ideas and go live it differently in their lives. So that's 2020 is about launching this new venture with my partner, and I'm excited about it, and still have some questions about it, but that's good.
Oh, that's great. I look forward to seeing that as it evolves, because I think that is wonderful. I would say to anyone listening in, if you're looking for a keynote speaker, get in touch with Jeff, because that's how I met Jeff. I listened to him give a talk in Raleigh, North Carolina, and you really, I'm not saying this to flatter you, but you're really good. You get your message across, and you have a great message to share.
Thank you, John.
Before we wrap up, just two questions to ask everybody. One, a book other than your own that has made a significant impact upon you, and why it did so.
Yeah, it's good. I'm going to probably shock you with this. I'm going to guess no one's ever said this book. It is a book, and I don't read much science fiction either. A few years ago, a friend of mine suggested a book called Ender's Game, and I'm going to forget the author's name, but Ender's Game became a movie, and he said, yeah, I know you don't like science fiction, but read it. Well, I read Ender's Game. I really enjoyed it. But the second book by this author, in this series, he writes lots of series. The second book in this series is called Speaker for the Dead. And the concept is that when someone died in this book, they can travel at the speed of light, so no one ages. But the speaker for the dead is when someone dies, you call for a speaker for the dead. The speaker travels, and they may not arrive for 20 years in that time. And then he talks to everybody that knew this person. And what the speaker for the dead does is they get up and they have a gathering, and he tells the truth about this person's life. The great stuff and the not so great stuff. And the stuff that was underneath, this person's wounds in life. And what he does is he realizes that through that process, he's creating healing. And it's a profound book, but I say this book because it's the only book that I've ever read a line, and I'm not going to quote it exactly, where I literally jumped up off the bed when I read it, threw the book on the bed, and started pointing at the book saying, yes, yes, yes. And it was a character that was faced with a very difficult decision. And he was talking to his best friend and said, I don't know if I can do this. And she said, you're the exact person to do this. And he said, what, cold-hearted? And she said, no, so loving that you are willing to put a hot iron into the wound in order to heal. And what it spoke to me is, and it's a lot about my work, that a lot of times my work involves going very deep with people and touching the parts that they don't want to touch, and it is painful. But this perspective shift that doing that is a gift, and it comes from a place of love. That one line was life-changing for me, and it came from this science fiction book.
Well, that's one that I haven't come across before, so that's great to get. I also think it kind of plays to what I believe in regard to coaching, because when I'm coaching somebody, it shouldn't be comfortable. Because if it's comfortable, we've kind of missed the point. Because change isn't comfortable. Second question, and I know that you're a fan of it, daily rituals that kind of set you up for the day. I'm always curious about what people's daily rituals are.
Well, I have a couple of them. I'd love to say that I was a more consistent aerobic exerciser. I don't have a great rhythm there, but what I do have a great rhythm around exercise is I started it, I bet I'm coming up on 15 years, but I do push-ups every morning. People always say, why are you, I'm a pretty big man, and so I do push-ups every morning, and I'm now up to, I do 300 push-ups a morning. I do something called diamond push-ups, and so I do 4 sets of 75 every morning. So that's my everyday exercise. I also do 2 kinds of reading. I get some of the blogs that come in. I don't read them all every day, but I do read Seth Godin every day. And I also get a couple of different devotionals, spiritual devotionals that I read every day. So those are my core routines, are my devotional reading, which is my soul stuff. and then my push-ups. And I usually during my drive time, either first thing in the morning or if I'm driving, my first thing, that's my prayer time.
Very good. Very, very good.
Yeah.
Jeff, listen, this has been fantastic. I've really enjoyed it, and I have taken up more of your time than I said I would. But where can people reach out and contact you?
Oh, yeah, thanks, John. The best way to reach me, I'll spell it as my either website or email. My website is www.nishwitz, that's NISCHWITZ group.com, or you can email me at jeff@nishwitzgroup.com. And I'm grateful. Thank you for having me, John. I'm excited that we met in such an unusual place. I know I'm in Florida now, and you're coming from France, and we meet in Raleigh, North Carolina. Who would know?
Yeah, how are the chances of that happening? But listen, this has been fantastic. It really has been. We'll put all of that in the show notes, so if people didn't catch it, they can actually see that in the show notes. And every success with the book. I look forward to reading it. I've no doubt it'll be as good as your previous ones, if not better. And every success for 2020. So, Jeff, thank you so much indeed.
Thanks, John. Have a wonderful week.